Okay, picture this. You're standing on a huge sun-baked plain, and as the morning mist starts to burn off, you see them. Not just a few, but thousands of ancient temples and pagodas stretching out as far as the eye can see. I mean, each one has its own story. This is Bagan in Myanmar, a place that just feels, well, otherworldly. So let's get into it. How did this incredible city of temples even happen, and what can its story teach us?
I mean, it's just a staggering sight. And it all boils down to one simple but huge question. How did a single kingdom, almost 1,000 years ago, pull this off? How did they build something on this epic of a scale? Well, that's the mystery we're going to try and solve together.
All right, our story kicks off way back in the 11th century. A powerful new kingdom is on the rise, and it's one that's going to lay the groundwork for the entire culture of what we now know as Myanmar.
Yep, we're talking about the Bagan dynasty. And for more than 200 years, they weren't just ruling, they were building, they were innovating, and they created a cultural legacy that was, and this is no exaggeration, literally written in stone.
So the heart of their entire world was right here, in a place called Old Bagan. And this location was no accident. It was super strategic. See, it's right on the banks of the massive Ayeyarwady River. This meant the city was protected by these big castle walls, and it could thrive thanks to all the grain being grown nearby and, of course, all the trade happening on the river.
But what's really fascinating is that Bagan didn't just pop up out of nowhere. It was a total cultural melting pot. You had Buddhism, brought in by this monk Shin Arahan. Then they absorbed all this incredible advanced culture from the Mon people, who themselves had these deep trading ties with India. They even pulled architectural ideas from the older Pew culture. So all these different ingredients, these seeds, they all blended together to create something brand new and totally unique.
And that unique culture, well, it found its ultimate expression in this just unbelievable explosion of building. It was creative, it was spiritual, and it kicked off what we now call Bagan's Golden Age.
Just let this number sink in for a second. Over 2,000. That's how many temples and pagodas are still standing right now. And get this, at its peak, the kingdom built thousands more. This was a society that was completely dedicated to building for eternity. It's just an incredible testament to their faith.
So you gotta ask, who was building all this stuff? Well, at first, back in the 11th century, it was mostly a royal gig. You know, the king showing off his piety and power. But then, in the 12th century, something really amazing happened. The whole idea of building temples just spread like wildfire through society. You had ministers, officials, even regular folks getting in on the action, building their very own pagodas.
And how do we even know all this? Simple. The builders told us themselves. They carved their stories right into the stone. They put down their names, their titles, and they listed out exactly what they donated, land, goods, you name it, along with the pagoda. So these aren't just giant stone monuments, they're personal records. They literally give a voice to the people who built them. But this incredible golden age of faith and building, it all came to a really sudden, really dramatic end. After centuries of just thriving, the kingdom, well, it just vanished. So the big question is, why? Well, historians think it was a chain of events. First off, that passion for building temples, it kind of got out of hand. It became so excessive that it started draining the kingdom's money and its power. And then, just when the kingdom was at its weakest, the final blow came from the outside.
That final blow was a war with the super powerful Yuan dynasty from China. And what's wild is that the famous traveler, Marco Polo, actually wrote about this conflict in his travels. After a brutal fight, the Bagan dynasty lost, and not long after that, the kingdom was just gone from the political map.
But this is where Bagan's story takes a really unique turn. It's what makes it so different from other huge ancient empires in that part of the world.
See, this is the key difference. You look at other amazing sites like Angkor in Cambodia or Borobudur in Indonesia, they were eventually just abandoned. They were forgotten for centuries, swallowed up by the jungle. But Bagan, the people there never, ever lost their faith in the place.
That's the thing. Bagan was never actually lost. It kept going. Not as a political capital, sure, but as a living, breathing heart of faith and culture. Its spiritual power, that never faded away.
And you can see the proof of this continued history all over the place. Later dynasties, like the Tungo and Kambaung, they made sure to protect and restore the big, important pagodas. You had artists adding new paintings to the walls centuries after the original kingdom was gone. Bagan even became this famous hub for making beautiful lacquerware, a craft that's still a huge deal there today.
And that unbroken chain of history brings us right up to today. But now the challenge isn't about building new temples, it's about saving the thousands that are already there.
And preserving them is a really urgent job. You see, Bagan is in an earthquake zone. A huge quake in 1975 did a ton of damage, and then another big one hit in 2016. These disasters have really pushed the international community to get involved, with groups like UNESCO working alongside the Myanmar government to figure out a long-term plan.
But the biggest problem, honestly, is just the sheer scale of it all. You've got this enormous number of monuments spread out over a massive area, but there's just not enough people or money to go around. Trying to protect every single building, well, it's a truly monumental task.
Which leaves us with one final, really important question. Every single one of these temples is a piece of a puzzle, a clue to the past. It tells us about their society, about trade, about their technology. It's a story written in stone by everyone from kings to everyday people. So the question is, how do we make sure that story can still be read for generations and generations to come?